more detailed than the document Scott Morrison released today. It is not a plan, it is a scam. Let's pick up with some of that with Sherri Goodman. She is a senior fellow at the Wilson Centre's Environmental Change and Security Programme, and John Christensen, senior advisor at the Danish climate think tank Concito, and he's co-editor of that UN Environment Programme report. So, John, if I may start with you, since you've authored part of this report, I mean, it is pretty scary what we read in it. We're missing the target by a country mile, and on the current trajectory, there's hardly any prospect that we're going to meet it, is there?
No, I mean, it does look bleak, but I mean, we have made this report every year. And of course, this year is the first time since Paris where countries have come back with a new updated pledge. So in that sense, of course, adding 7% to what they said in Paris is a small step in the right direction. Theoretically, if you added 7% every year, you would eventually get to 50%. But I mean, the closer we get to 2030, the more difficult it becomes, of course, to implement the policies before the deadline. So it is something where we are seeing a real problem and hope that it will basically be picked up as the leading issue in Glasgow.
You say in this report that we have 8 years really to turn it around, up to 2030. The science is changing rapidly, the technology is changing rapidly. Given the target that we face, shouldn't we be meeting more regularly than every 2 to 3 years?
That's going to be one of the issues. I mean, in the Paris Agreement, there's what is called a sort of ramping up process, which is running on a 5-year timescale. And with the impacts we're seeing, and that we might hear more about later on, we can't wait 5 years for another ramp up. It needs to be something we do either annual or biannually, so that we keep each other sort of feet to the fire and see what's coming in. And that's going to be one of the sort of side discussions in Glasgow, how to do that. The problem is things on climate are often linked together. So, of course, for many developing countries, it's linked to the provision of international climate finance. And just yesterday or the day before, there was a new report released by Germany and Canada looking at the pledge of 100 billion by 2020 and basically saying, well, we only made 80 billion, which of course is a fine number, but it's not sufficient. And it doesn't look like it's coming either in the coming years. So, of course, many developing countries have made pledges that are conditional on support. If that support is not received, then it becomes a problem for them to implement it. So things are linked together. We need to look also at the financing at the same time.
Sherri, the juxtaposition of the two announcements today, the report from the UN telling us how far and how quickly we need to go, together with the statement from the Australian government, really underlines how stark it is. I mean, really what Australia has set out today misses the urgency of the situation.
Yeah, I mean, Australia has...
Sherri, let me just bring Sherri in there. Sorry, John. Let me bring Sherri in there. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sherri.
Yes, to protect our way of life, we really need to be stepping on the solar and the wind instead of the gas, as we say. So instead of stepping on the gas, we need to ramp up our investment in renewables across the board, and we need to make our societies more resilient to adapt to the threats of climate change that are already here. That's how we're going to protect our way of life, because climate change does act as a threat multiplier, and we're already seeing those increasing extreme weather events, from hurricanes to tropical cyclones, from sea level rise to storm surge, from drought and growing food and water insecurity across many fragile countries in the world.
You've educated, Sherri, a generation of US military and government officials on the impact of climate change and what the impact of that is for national security. You talked there about spending on resilience. We don't really see any spending on that, do we? We see spending on new technologies, but not on what is going to happen because of the climate change. And we're not going to stop the effects of this climate change.
No, we're not going to stop what's already baked into the system. And that's why we have to act now on resilience. And in reports released just last week by the U.S. Department of Defense and the intelligence community, they outlined steps that, for example, the Department of Defense is taking to integrate climate change across all parts of the military, from making our bases more resilient to sea level rise and storm surge, to investing in new technologies, to understanding how extreme heat is going to affect troops as they deploy around the world.
John, when it comes to Australia, when it comes to others actually who are dragging their heels on the targets that they will be expected to make in Glasgow, is it up to the chair, the UK, and also, of course, the United States, Joe Biden will be there, to put the pressure on, even though they're dealing with close allies?
I think it's necessary. I mean, Australia has been, I would say, one of the outliers also. If you look at our report, we've always been discussing with them with their approach also in the last submission, because it's kind of what they call a budget approach, so you can wait on doing things too close to the deadline. And we don't see what is in Australia right now is giving them the right track to achieve even the first target. But of course, that is a dispute we've been going on, and we don't normally go in and criticize individual countries, but it's something that there needs to be some political peer pressure coming up for sure.
And Sherri, the Americans will only have that leverage if Joe Biden can go to Glasgow saying, look at the legislation that we have pushed through, this is what we're doing. And at the moment, he doesn't have that piece of paper in his hand.
This is a crucial week in the United States, and the president is devoting all his attention and energy to trying to get that most important deal that will arm him with the tools he needs to make a strong showing for American climate ambition in Glasgow. It comes down to just a few members of Congress, and he's working that all the time.
Sherri Goodman, John Christensen, thank you very much for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.